I overheard Mom promise my brother, "Your sister will cover the debt. She never refuses family." My husband said, "Move every penny" that night. A week later, Mom knocked. I said the one word she never expected. I set the lemon cake down on the top porch step like I was putting down something I'd been carrying for a very long time. Then I walked back to my car. I didn't knock. I didn't call out. I didn't do what I would normally have done, which was push through the screen door and set the cake on the counter and pretend I hadn't heard what I'd just heard through the mesh. I just picked up my keys from the passenger seat and drove home with both hands on the wheel and the radio off and a number sitting in my chest like a stone. $48,000. 4 years of packed lunches. 4 years of skipped vacations. Of buying the store brand. Of looking at things online and closing the tab. 4 years of Daniel and me sitting at the kitchen table on Sunday nights running the same quiet calculation. How much? How long? How close? Building toward the thing we wanted most in the world. Dollar by careful dollar. In the particular hope that is also a kind of grief. The hope that comes after loss and knows exactly how much it costs. Our third round of IVF. My mother wasn't reaching for my savings account. She was reaching for a child we hadn't had yet. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a few minutes in the dark and breathed. Then I went inside and told my husband everything. My name is Kendra Mercer Holloway. I'm 34 years old. I'm a bookkeeper. I keep the financial records for 3 small businesses in town, and I have been doing this work long enough to understand something that takes most people years to learn. Numbers don't have feelings, but they do have memory. Every transaction leaves a trail. Every balance tells a story. The ledger doesn't care what you meant. It only records what you did. This skill has made me very good at my job. It also, as it turned out, made me very dangerous to my family once I finally decided to use it on them. Daniel Holloway is 37, a project estimator for a mid-sized construction firm, a man who processes information the way a good engineer processes load calculations. Quietly, completely, then tells you the result. He has never raised his voice at me in 6 years of marriage. He has also never once been wrong about a structural problem. My mother, Renee Mercer, is 61. She is warm in the way that certain people are warm, genuinely, but instrumentally. The warmth and the want have always lived in the same place in her, so thoroughly intertwined that I think she stopped being able to distinguish between them a long time ago. She loves me. I believe that, even now. She also has spent 34 years converting that love into a resource she could draw on whenever the family needed something covered. My brother Travis is 38. He has been starting businesses since he was 22 and failing at them since 23 in a cycle so reliable you could set a calendar by it. He has the specific charisma of a person who is always in the middle of his next great idea, and the specific blindness of someone who has never once been left to face the full consequence of the last one. That's not entirely his fault. The consequences were always softened before they fully landed, usually by me. He's the reason I was on that porch with a lemon cake on a Thursday evening. My mother had called that morning to say she was making dinner. Come over, bring something sweet. She'd said it in the warm voice, the one that means everything is fine, just family, just love. I'd stopped at the bakery on the way. I was going to knock. I had my hand raised, and then my mother's voice came clean through the screen door. "Don't stress about the debt, baby. We'll have your sister cover it." A pause. The creak of a chair. She never refuses family. I stood on that porch for 3 full seconds, long enough to be certain I'd heard it correctly, long enough for the warmth of the bakery bag to register in my hands, and the specific quality of the evening air, and the sound of my brother saying nothing in response because there was nothing to say. Because, of course she would. She always did. I set the cake down. I walked to my car. I drove home. Daniel was at the kitchen table when I came in. He looked at my hands, registered the absence of the cake, and looked at my face. I told him everything. He listened all the way through without moving, elbows on the table, the focused stillness of someone running calculations in real time. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "How much is in the joint account?" he asked. He meant the old account, the one my mother and I had opened 4 years ago to manage my grandmother's medical expenses. Grandma Mercer had passed in 2019. The account had just sat there afterward, both our names still on it, a door I'd never gotten around to closing. "Around $3,200, I said. "Almost all of it is her own deposits from the last few months. I haven't touched it." He nodded. "Okay, here's what I need you to do." He got up and put the kettle on. He came back and sat down. "Open a new account tonight. Different bank. Not First Regional. Somewhere she has no relationship. Your name only. Move every penny of our savings. Not next week. Tonight." I looked at him. "Kendra." His voice was very even. "She's already decided. She's going to move on this fast because she doesn't think she needs to ask you first. She never has. So you have a window, and it's tonight." He put a mug of tea in front of me. He sat back down. He looked at me with the expression he uses when he wants me to understand he's serious without making it feel like pressure. "Move every penny," he said again. "Tonight." I opened my laptop at the kitchen table at 9:14 p.m. By 11:30, the savings account Daniel and I had built over 4 years, 47 Saudi $840, the number I knew by heart, the way you know a number that means everything, existed at a different bank, under my name only, completely unreachable. I closed the laptop. I drank my tea. I went to bed. My mother called the next morning at 8:52, the sweetest voice she has, the one she reserves for the moments right before she asks for something significant. There's a particular quality to it, softer than her regular warmth, slightly slower. I'd been hearing it my whole whole life and had spent most of that time responding to the sweetness rather than the signal. Not this time. She circled. She asked about Daniel, about work, about how I was sleeping. Then casually, like it was a small administrative thing, she mentioned the joint account. Said it might be useful to keep it open. For family things, easy access, just handy to have. Of course, I said. I'll think about it. You're so practical, sweetheart. You always think ahead. I really do, I said. I have to get back to work. I hung up and sat at my desk for a moment. Then I went upstairs to the attic, which I hadn't been in for at least 2 years, and pulled down the cardboard shoebox I kept on the shelf behind the winter coats. Inside, receipts, carbon copy checks, bank transfer records going back 11 years, the meticulous paper trail of a bookkeeper who never threw anything away, not because I'd been planning this moment, but because numbers have memory, and I had always kept mine. And at the bottom, folded into quarters, in an envelope I'd never fully opened because opening it would have meant admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. A promissory note. Travis's handwriting. The big, looping signature of someone who signs things with confidence and no particular intention. I, Travis Mercer, owe my sister Kendra Mercer the sum of $4,500 to be repaid when the bar achieves profitability. The bar had closed 18 months after it opened. I'd been told it was market conditions. I'd been told he was going to pay it back from the next venture. I sat down on the attic floor with the shoebox in my lap, and I built a ledger. I am a bookkeeper. This is what I do. Every transaction I could document, dated, with the corresponding stub or record. The apartment deposit when Travis was 23 and his landlord required first and last, under $1,800. The transmission on his truck when he was 26, $2,200. The Christmas heating bill the year his power got cut off, $340. The bar lease deposit, twice, $6,000 each time. A dozen smaller ones over 11 years. The cell phone bill, the car registration, the vet bill for his dog, the flight home when he got stranded in Phoenix, the grocery run I'd done and never been reimbursed for. Repaid column, zeros, every single line. I added it up twice because I always add things up twice. $26,400. $26,400. Given in love over 11 years, never returned, never mentioned again, as though the giving had simply made the debt disappear, as though the love itself was the repayment. I photographed every page with my phone. I came downstairs and scanned everything into a folder on my desktop. Then I called my financial advisor. Her name is Sandra Obi. She has been a certified financial planner for 17 years, runs a small independent practice in town, and has worked with Daniel and me for the last 4 years building the savings plan that had funded our IVF attempts. She knows the number, $47,140, the same way I do, because she helped us build it. She also knows what it's for. I called her on a Friday morning and told her what I'd overheard and what I'd done. She was quiet for a moment. You moved it all Thursday night? Yes. Good. And the joint account? You left it? There's $3,200 in it, most of it hers. Leave it exactly as it is, she said. Don't touch it. Don't close it. Let it sit there and let her think it's still the door she thinks it is. Why? Because if she goes to that account before she talks to you, you'll know something important about what she was planning to do. I understood. Sandra thinks like a bookkeeper too. I'm going to recommend you talk to your attorney before this goes any further, she said. Not because you've done anything wrong. You haven't. But you have a joint account with your mother. You have $26,400 in undocumented loans, and your mother apparently knows which bank you use. You need someone to tell you what your exposure is. She paused. You should also document the conversation you overheard. Write it down today. Exact words, exact time, what you were doing. Date it. Send it to yourself by email so there's a timestamp. I wrote it down that afternoon, sent it to my own email at 2:47 p.m., forwarded it to Sandra. Then I called a family law and civil attorney named Jeffrey Park, who had been recommended to me by one of my bookkeeping clients after a difficult contract dispute. He has 21 years of practice. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. He returned my call within the hour. The bank called me the following Wednesday. First Regional, the joint account. A flag had been triggered by an attempted transaction, a transfer request submitted in branch by a joint account holder. I sat at my desk and felt a cold clarity settle over me. She had gone to the bank before she came to my house. She had walked into First Regional, presented her ID and her joint account access, and tried to move money to an account I didn't recognize. The request had been flagged because the transfer amount exceeded a threshold that required both account holders to authorize. She'd been told she needed my signature. She found $3,200, mostly her own deposits, nothing else, because I'd spent the week quietly carrying the furniture out the back door, as Daniel had told me to. She'd walked into an empty room and didn't know it yet. I thanked the bank representative. I documented the call, time, representative's name, exact language used. I forwarded it to Jeffrey Park by email that evening. His response came at 7:03 p.m. This is now a pattern. Keep everything. They came on Saturday afternoon. I had known they were coming since Thursday, when my mother's texts had escalated from warm to pressing to, on Friday evening, a message that said, "Your brother needs $48,000. Family doesn't let each other drown. We'll sort out the account when we're all together. You always do the right thing," by which she meant, you always pay. I'd read it 3 times. Then I'd set my phone face down and finish the folder I'd been preparing since the attic. They arrived at 2:15 p.m. My mother first, with the bearing of a woman arriving to handle something. Travis behind her. her, in the particular energy of a person who is about to ask for something enormous and has been convinced by someone else that he deserves it. His wife Brooke in the doorway, phone already raised, filming, which I registered with a small, cold interest because Brooke is what Daniel calls a narrator, someone who documents events for an audience rather than experiencing them, and her presence with a camera meant someone had framed this as a story they expected to win. My father, last, sitting at the edge of the love seat before anyone directed him there, looking at his hands. My father has always known when something was wrong. He's just never once interrupted my mother to say so. I stayed standing. I didn't offer anything to drink. My mother settled onto my couch with the ease of a woman in familiar territory. She began her speech in the warm voice. Travis's situation, the collectors, the family closing ranks, what family does. She had the cadence of a person who had given this speech before and found it effective. Then she reached over and patted my hand. You never refuse family. I picked up the folder from the end table. I opened it. I set it in front of her. She looked down at the first page, the ledger. Every transaction, dated, sourced, documented. 11 years of my money handed over in love. The zeros in the repaid column running all the way down the page like a verdict. She turned to the second page. Travis's promissory note. His handwriting, his signature, his completely confident scrawl promising $4,500 against future bar profits that never arrived. The third page. The bank letter. The attempted transfer. The date. 6 days ago. Her name in the transaction record. She went very still. Travis was leaning forward now, reading over her shoulder. His face moved through several expressions. Confusion, recognition, something that might have been shame if he'd been alone. You already moved it, my mother said. Her voice had changed. The warmth was gone. Something underneath it, older and less managed. Before you ever came over. You knew. I heard you through the screen door, I said. And my husband told me to move every penny that night. I also went to the attic. I've been keeping receipts since I was 22. I let her read the ledger again. I gave her time. That's something Jeffrey Park had told me. Let them read it fully. Don't rush the moment. The document should do the work. Brooke was still filming. Her hand had lowered slightly. I glanced at her once and she looked away. Then my mother came off the couch. After everything we did for you, her voice was cracking open, the way it does when the managed version fails and something rawer comes through. After everything we sacrificed, you sit here with your folder, you ungrateful, selfish girl. Travis was on his feet too, voice rising. Brooke narrating quietly into her phone in a tone that had gone uncertain. My father still on the love seat, looking at nothing, which was the truest thing in the room. I stood still. I have always been still under pressure. Bookkeeping teaches you that. The numbers don't get louder when they're right. They just stay exactly as they are and wait for you to look at them. My mother was saying things I had heard versions of my whole life. You were always so capable. You never needed help the way he did. You were fine. Each sentence a reframing, an explanation that turned 34 years of taking into 34 years of reading me correctly. I waited until she ran out of sentences. Then I said the only word that mattered, the one she had spent 34 years making sure I would never find. No, she stopped. No to the $48,000. No to the joint account. No to the conversation where we renegotiate this into something I agree to. I kept my voice completely even. I love you. I love Travis. I have loved this family with everything I had for 34 years, and I can show you the receipts. I touched the folder. But I'm not a resource, and I'm done being managed like one. My mother stared at me. You don't mean that. I've meant it for years, I said. I'm only saying it now. The room was quiet in a way it hadn't been in my memory. Travis sat back down. Brooke's phone was pointed at the floor. My father looked up from his hands for the first time since he arrived, and looked at me, and said nothing. But his face was doing something complicated that I didn't have the language for yet. My mother picked up her bag. She looked at me the way a person looks at a landscape they thought they knew when something in it has fundamentally changed. Then she walked out. Travis followed. Brooke closed the door behind them without the narration. My father stayed for another 3 minutes. He sat in the love seat and looked at the folder on the table. He didn't say anything. I didn't push him. When he stood to leave, he stopped in the doorway. You were always fine, he said quietly. That's what we told ourselves. I'm sorry we let ourselves believe it. He left. The door closed softly. Daniel came out of the kitchen, where he'd been since they arrived. He set a mug of tea on the table in front of me. He sat down across from me. He didn't say anything for a moment. How do you feel? I looked at the folder. At the zeros in the repaid column. At a number I had been carrying for 11 years without fully understanding I was carrying it. Empty, I said, but the good kind. Like something's been put down. He reached across the table. I took his hand. 6 months later, we began our third round of IVF. Sandra Obi was the first person I called with the news, after Daniel, because she'd helped me build the number, and she deserved to know it was being used for what it was always meant for. She cried a little on the phone, which surprised me, because Sandra is a very composed person. I've been thinking about you two since March, she said. We transferred in October. I took the morning off work and drove to the clinic with Daniel in his truck and sat in the waiting room with his hand in mine. 11 days later, the test was positive. I sat in the bathroom for a long time holding the result. Then I came out and showed Daniel, and he sat down on the edge of the bed and put his face in his hands and made a sound I will never be able to describe accurately but will never forget. There's a folder in my filing cabinet with all the receipts. The ledger, the promissory note, the bank letter, the timestamps. Jeffrey Park has copies. So does Sandra. So does my email server, which keeps everything indefinitely. I haven't spoken to to Travis since the Saturday in my living room. I haven't spoken to Brooke. My mother calls occasionally. The warm voice, circling, never quite arriving at a direct acknowledgement of what happened. I answer sometimes. I keep the conversations short. My father texted me in November. I told your mother we need to pay you back. She wasn't ready to hear it. I'm trying. I wrote back. I know, Dad. Thank you. I meant it. The lemon cake is still the bakery's best one. I know because I went back and bought a whole one for Daniel's birthday in December. For us. For our table. With nobody's name on it but ours. I sat at the kitchen table with my husband and we ate an unreasonable amount of it. And I didn't feel guilty about a single bite. The well is full again.